Enroll your child for the manifested e-learning platform and see their grades grow tremendously. These videos can be downloaded to a laptop for offline viewing or viewed from a smartphone in a course-friendly format.
Hello students, welcome to Manifested e-learning platform. My name is Wilson Andove and I'm your literature teacher. Now, some of you are wondering, what is literature? Literature is actually what I'm sure most of us have gone through. When you read a story, when you read a poem, or when you see people acting on stage, that's literature. Some of us might have read a novel by Ngugi wa Thiong'o called The River Between. That is an example of what we call literature. We have many other stories or many other novels. Examples by Chinua Achebe called Things Fall Apart. Such a novel is what we call literature. So literature actually means any form of art, mostly that which is written down and uses language in a very special way is defined as literature. So we can begin by defining the term literature. So we shall have the topic here, literature. So we shall begin by defining the term literature. And we are saying literature is any form of art that is mostly written down and is of superior quality. And this art uses language in a special way. Now that's literature. So if you look at our definition, we are talking about the word art. The word art means it's creativity, relies on creativity, relies on imagination. In other words, someone has to think and come up with something that may not be existing. That is art. And this art is mostly written down. Why is it written down? For the purpose of future generations. If you have this art and it's not captured in a book, we might easily lose it. And that's why we write, that's why it's normally in books, so that we can keep it for future generation, what we call prosperity. And then we are also saying that this art is of superior quality. That means not just any piece of writing is considered as being literature. It must be of superior quality, must be of high standard, so that it can withstand the test of time. And lastly, this art uses language in a special way. In a special way. We are going to look at literature in details. We actually deploy language in a special way. So that is literature. I want to give a very good example. There's a book known as Romeo and Juliet. Who wrote it? It's called William Shakespeare. That book, students, was written about 500 years ago. But up to today, the book is still relevant. If I read by so many people, because that book in itself is a masterpiece, is of superior quality, and the language used is used in a special way. So that is literature. So that's the definition of the term literature. And then literature has two broad categories. So we have what we call genres or categories of literature. And students, we have two main categories of literature. Number one is what we call written literature. And number two, oral literature. Now, in this lesson, we shall look at written literature. We have already done oral literature in details in previous lessons. So, we want to begin looking at written literature. We said oral literature is literature that is handed down, that is conveyed through word of mouth, from one generation to another generation through word of mouth. Unlike written literature, which is actually conveyed through the written word. By this I mean it's actually documented in books. So that's what we mean by the word written literature. So we're going to look at written literature in details. So we're going to have written literature. And I've already defined the creative work of art. Whose medium of exchange is through the written word. And employs language creatively. So this is how we define written literature. The creative work of art whose medium of exchange is through the written word and employs language creatively. So we want to look at the various, before we look at the various genres of literature, we want to look at features of written literature. So we shall look at features of written literature. And students, we want to look at features of written literature. And I have to mention this, that these features also apply in oral literature. The difference is the medium of communication. In oral literature, I said, you're using word of mouth to convey the message. But in written literature, we're using the written word. So the first feature is it uses language creatively. By this I mean language must be used in a special way. We're going to look at that. We're going to apply some stylistic devices in language use. So in written literature, we use language in a way that is very special. Number two, it carries a moral lesson. Yes, students, any piece of creative work, any piece of literature that does not support morality is not deemed as literature. Even if that work is creative, but does not support morality, or in other words, supports immorality, then that is not written literature. Number three, it is fictitious or fictional. I'll explain. The word fictitious means what actually happens in that story is not the reality. It's actually out of sheer imagination. Therefore, the characters in that story are not your real characters in real life. They are actually made by the writer. We call that fictitious or fictional. Literature also reflects what happens in the society. As much as the characters in that book are fictitious, but the message that they espouse, that they bring forth, should be what happens in the society. In fact, we say literature is a mirror of the society. Literature should show, should mirror, should reflect what happens in the society. So students, these are the major features of literature, both oral and written literature. Now, I now want to look at the forms of written literature. Forms means the various categories, the various types of written literature. And the first one is poetry. Number 2 is drama. And number 3 is prose. Now let me explain each one of them, students. Poetry is the study of poems. We are going to look at those poems in details later. But when you study a poem, we call that poetry. Drama is the study of plays. When a play is a book. Once you have this play on stage being acted, we call that drama. The study of plays is called drama. Then we have prose. Prose is the study of continuous writing. That means when you are writing, for example, a novel, you write in lines, then you go to paragraphs. You write in sentences, and then you go to paragraphs. We call that prose. So students, we shall look at each one of these in details. But for today, we want to look at prose writing. So we're going to have prose. And I've said prose is the study of continuous writing beginning with a sentence which builds into a paragraph, then we have it builds further into a page. So that is prose writing. You start with a sentence. Then you have a number of sentences that will build into a paragraph. And then that paragraph will then build further into a page. And then from a page, you're going to have a chapter and all that. So we call that prose writing. And so under this, we want to look at forms of prose writing, what we call categories of prose writing. or forms of prose writing. The first form is what called the novel. The novel, I'm sure students, at one point you have read a novel either in primary school or in secondary school. So what's a novel? A novel is just a form of continuous writing that is long. It's called a full length form of continuous writing. So this is a full length form of continuous writing that is complex in character building and it addresses a wide array of what you call of issues, which you call themes. So a novel is just a book, a story that is long, maybe 100 pages, 200 pages, that's a novel. For example, The River Between by Ngugi wa Thiong'o is a well-known novel, and there are many more novels. Now, for you students, we have what we call set books. Set books. Set books are texts that have been given by the government that you need to study either in Form 3, that you need to study in Form 3 and in Form 4. And they are going to run from 2019 to 2023. So from 2019, we are going to have new set books. Those which have been existing, now that time has elapsed. So we're going to have new set books that are being rolled out, that are going to be studied by students. Now in this category of the novel, this is now your new set book. Blossoms of the Savannah. This is the new set book by Henry Olekulet. So students, this is the first compulsory book that you are going to study, and it is a novel. Something else, as you buy this book, students, get a book that has been approved by the Ministry of Education. We normally have various versions of books, but get a book that has been approved by the Ministry of Education, what we call a school version. The second book is called The Pearl by John Steinbeck. Now, this is a novel, but this novel is optional. Optional. The first one is compulsory. This means all students in this country, in Kenya, will have to study Blossoms of the Savannah. This novel, The Pearl, is optional. That means you can decide to study it or not. So students, the novel is the commonest form of prose writing. Let us look at other types of forms of prose writing, and you allow me to erase this part so that I can write here. Now, stemming from the novel, and now this is number 2. Number 1 was novel. These are the set books that are under the novel. Number 2, we have what we call a novella. 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 Now, a novella is a short novel. This is a short novel. For example, students, if you decide to write a book that is about 50 pages or 70 pages, a novel in that case, then that novel is not complete, is not a full-length novel. We call that a novella. It is a short novel. But novellas are very rare in writing. Number 3, we have short story. Now, a short story is close to a novella, only that a short story is shorter than a novella. Any piece of writing, any prose writing that is between 3 pages and 20 pages, that is a short story. So, a story that can be read in one sitting is called a short story. A story that can be read in one sitting. It can be between 1,000 to 7,000 words. So that is a short story, students. And for our set text, what normally happens is we are given a collection of short stories. So for the year 2019 to 2023, these are the books that we are going to study. It's called Memories We Lost and Other Stories. They have been edited by Wanjala Chris. So students, now this title is an anthology. It means a collection, anthology. It means a collection of many short stories. One of them is Memories We Lost. So this is the set text that you are going to study from 2019 all the way to 2023. It's called the short story. We have these stories. The editor is Chris Wanjala. He's the one who compiled those stories, Chris Wanjala. Number 4, students, is what called an autobiography. Remember, we are still looking at prose writing. We said number 1 is novel, number 2 is novella, number 3 is short story, number 4 is autobiography. An autobiography is a story about a person's life written by himself or herself. So a story about a person's life written by himself or herself. For example, students, if I write my life history, my life story, from the time I was born to where I am right now, I'm the writer, I'm the author of that book, it's about me, then that is an autobiography. They are very common. Most leaders actually normally write their own autobiographies. Number 5 is biography. Now, a biography, just like an autobiography, talks about someone's life story. The difference is who is writing this story. Biography, someone else writes your life story. Get me clearly, students. In an autobiography, you write your own story. You are the author of your story. So it's about you. So you start by looking at your life from the time you are born. You say, I was born on this day. But in a biography, someone else writes your story. So there's someone who's going to study your life and is going to pen down your life history. That is a biography. A story about a person's life written by somebody else. So that is a biography. Let us now look at other forms of prose writing, and I'll come this side. So our number 6 is called historical fiction. Now remember we said that literature is fictitious. That means what actually is in that book is not in the real life. For example, if you meet a character in a certain book, that character does not necessarily exist in the real life. But in historical fiction, we are capturing history as it happened. So in this book, we have facts and not fiction. So it's a story that captures historical events. Therefore, it is factual. It is factual. Now, most writers like blending, like mixing fiction with fact, with history. So you'll find in most stories, for example, in the river between, you find there's fiction, the story of Wayaki, but there's also the story of Kenya, how Kenya gained independence. That is fact. So the writer is going to blend, is going to mix fiction with fact. So a story that entirely talks about historical matters or issues, that is a historical fiction story. Then we can even have science fiction. Now, in science fiction, the writer will talk about the scientific aspect, mostly about the future. So a story that captures the likely future scientific events is called science fiction. Some of us may have read stories about the outer space, Mars, Jupiter. If, for example, a story is set on another planet, like Mars, Jupiter, a story is set in the outer space, that is science fiction. It's not about what's happening here and now, it's about the world of science. That is called science fiction. Then lastly, we have what's called realistic fiction. Now, I've talked about the science fiction, setting a story in the scientific world. But some stories actually talk about what's happening in the real world. So when a writer captures what happens, so it's a story that captures what happens in the real world or realistic world. In this case, you capture what is happening here and now, what people go through, our daily struggles. Such a story is called a realistic fiction. So, students, this marks the summary. This marks actually the end of today's lesson. And before we finish, I want to give you a recap of what we have talked about. We began by defining the term literature, and we said that any creative work that is artistic in nature and uses language in a special way is called literature. And in most cases, literature is in written form. Then we said there are three main categories of written literature. There's poetry, there's drama and prose, and of course there's oral literature that I said we had covered earlier. So under written literature, we have poetry, we have drama and prose. And we have said that poetry is the study of poems, either writing or a poem written by somebody else. Once you study it, you call that poetry. Drama is the study of plays, and our plays normally acted on a stage, so we call that drama. Prose, what we have discussed majorly, is the study of continuous writing. And in this case, we said from a sentence you build to a paragraph, then you build into a page, and then you build into a chapter. That's prose writing. Then under prose writing, we have various forms of prose writing. We have the novel, that's the commonest form of prose writing. We have the novella, which is a short novel. We have a short story. We have an autobiography. We have a biography. We have historical fiction, science fiction, and lastly, we have the realistic fiction. So up to that point, students, that will mark the end of today's lesson. Until next time, be blessed. Thank you.
Manifested Publishers Limited is a research and teaching center that specializes in the production of learning materials and private online tuition for primary, secondary, tertiary, and university education. Sign up as a new customer at www.manifestedpublishers.com. Fill in the required credentials, full name, email, phone number, and password. Click on Sign Up. Enter the code received on your phone or email address for verification of your account, then proceed by clicking on Confirm button. Your account is ready for use and you can watch some free videos before you purchase. To get access to complete videos, use the following steps to buy. Click on View All Courses. Select the course you want to subscribe to. Click on the subject you want. Click on Buy this subject. The selected subject will be added to cart. Place or hover the cursor on cart or total amount and click on Checkout Now to proceed. Click on Lipa na M-Pesa and proceed to pay. To access your lessons, place the cursor on your name, then click on Subscriptions. To download videos for offline studying, click on Watch Offline. Download the Manifested e-learning desktop application depending on your computer operating system. Install the application on your computer. Sign in on your downloaded app using the credential used during registration. Place your cursor on your name, then click on Subscriptions. Click on the subject you purchased. On the top right window, click on Download for offline viewing. Click on Go to Course. In your new window, click on the first topic, Lesson 1. Downloading process begins automatically. Thank you for choosing to study with us. For more information, you can call us on 0724 173845.